So today we're talking about soloing on the jazz standard There Will Never Be Another You. It's a good one to know if you're wanting to be a jazz musician. You're probably going to have to play it at some point or another. If you're not trying to be a jazz musician, you just want to learn the tune, it's a great tune to learn. So let's get into it, soloing on it. Now, there are several different approaches you can use to figure out how to solo on this, but what I'm going to show you is painting with broad strokes and getting more and more detailed. And hopefully you'll get some ideas that will be useful for you. Okay, so first you got to know, there's a few things you need to know. The melody, the chord changes, both of which I cover in a previous video. I'll put a link to that up here or something. So you want to know the melody, you want to know the chord changes, and you want to know a couple of scales. So we'll get into those. But first, let's look at the first few chord changes. So we've got E flat major 7, or in this case I'm playing E flat major 9. And then we've got a 2-5-1 to C minor. So this E flat is for 2 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. And then we have D half diminished to G7 with a, it can be a G7 altered. I'm playing a flat 13. And then C minor 7, 2 bars. And then a 2-5-1 to A flat. And then we have the A flat, D flat, back to E flat, C minor, then F9, F minor 9, to B flat 13, and then we're back to E flat major 7. And it kind of starts again, but with a different ending. So let's take the first little bit. Most of these chords are in the key of E flat major. So what would happen if we use the E flat major pentatonic over all these chord changes? Let's see. So I'm gonna put my play along a bit slower to try and make it a little easier for you to follow along. Okay, E flat major pentatonic. Okay, so it kind of works over everything, but there are some parts that it was a little dicey, right? So those are some parts that we want to kind of outline the chords a little bit, or at least grab a couple chord tones, and then we can go back to our pentatonic scale. So what are those points? When we have the 2-5 to C minor, that's one. We want to maybe grab a B natural in there to highlight that G7. So here's what that will sound like if I add a B natural when I get to the G7 chord. Okay, so you kind of heard that change there where it went to the G7, I played a B natural. I also played a D natural, which is outside the pentatonic scale, but it's kind of getting into another scale we'll talk about in a little bit. So this pentatonic scale is kind of working. We just need to alter it a little bit, right? Okay, so we've got the E flat major pentatonic. Now let's see what happens if we use the E flat minor pentatonic, or the E flat minor blues, and see what that sounds like. Since we're in the key of E flat, it's going to sound more bluesy, but let's see what happens. Let's play it. Here we go. Okay, so there are quite a few spots where that wasn't really working, right? It sounded a little off. But there were some parts that it kind of did work. So what were those spots? I think that when it went to that F7, the F13, it kind of worked over that. And the 2-5-1 back to E flat, it kind of worked over that too. So now we've got two scales to switch between. And that's getting us working towards actually playing the chord changes. Just being able to switch between two chords is a good start. Okay, so now I'm going to play the major blues, which would be, and the minor blues. And try and switch in between them. See if you can tell when I'm using which one. All right, here we go. Okay, kind of getting some George Benson-y kind of stuff in there. Very bluesy sounding, and that's a particular thing. And you also, when you're using your blues stuff, you don't want to use the same blues language that you would use when you're playing the blues necessarily. Like, you don't want to be bending all over the place. It's just not idiomatically, it's not really in the language. It takes it kind of out of the feeling. So try to avoid bending too much. You know, some bends here and there are cool. But if you're doing all your, that stuff, it ain't really going to fly in a jazz setting. At least most of the time, playing a standard like this. Okay, so we've got a couple of pentatonic scales, and we can switch between depending on our ear and what we're wanting to hear. Okay, so now let's start getting a little bit more detailed. So we'll keep our major pentatonic, our major blues stuff, right? And then when we get to the 2-5 to C minor, let's switch it up and play maybe the C harmonic minor scale. Okay, so we're going to play that when we get that 2-5-1 to C minor. So we're playing E flat major, and then we get the 2-5, and we stay there for C minor. And then when we get to the 2-5 to A flat major, let's switch to the A flat major scale. So now we've got 3 scales that we're dealing with. All right, and let's see what that sounds like. We may need to throw another one in there, but let's see where we're at. Here we go. Back to the pentatonic. Okay, so you heard where I went to that, something like that over that C minor, and then when I got to the B flat minor 7 to E flat 7 to the A flat major, I switched to the A flat major scale. So that's B Dorian, E flat Mixolydian, and A flat major, A flat Ionian. You don't have to think about all the individual modes necessarily, but because they all come from the same scale. They're all coming from A flat major. So we get this A flat major, but then right after it, it goes to this D flat 7 with a sharp 11, or D flat 9, before going back to E flat major. So over that chord, I like to play the A flat minor, A flat melodic minor, which would be D, the D Lydian dominant, or D flat Lydian dominant. So that's D flat Lydian dominant. The parent scale of that is the A flat melodic minor. So I kind of think of that part as doing the A flat major to A flat minor. It's just easier for me to think about it like that. Okay, so now we've got a few different scales. We've got the E flat major pentatonic, and then the C harmonic minor, and then A flat major, and then A flat melodic minor, and then back to E flat major. Okay, so let's see what those ones sound like. We're going to have a different scale when we get up to that F13 chord, but check out what we've got so far. Okay, now we're on the F7 there. Over that F7, I like to play it as a F7 with a sharp 11, and I'll use the C melodic minor, or F Lydian dominant. So that would be, and you can think of that as F Lydian dominant or C melodic minor. It's the same thing. And then we're back to E flat major for the 2-5-1, F minor 7, B flat 7, and E flat. And then we're back home. Okay, so we went on a bit of a journey there, but we've got a few different scales that we're using. This is a scale-wise approach. So we've got E flat major, C harmonic minor, A flat major, A melodic minor. Then we're back to E flat major again, and then C melodic minor. Okay, so let's see what those sound like. Here we go. I'll try to play them as close to like being a scale as I can with it still being musical, or trying to be musical. Here we go. Okay, so that was starting to sound like something, right? I wasn't thinking about chord tones too much. I was just thinking about key centers. E flat major, C minor, A flat major, A flat minor, back to E flat again, and then the F dominant, F7. So it kind of simplifies it a little bit, right? Kind of we were painting with broader strokes with the pentatonics. Now we're getting a little bit more detailed. Now let's keep going. Let's get a little bit more detailed with some chord tones. So playing chord tones, you need to know what notes are in each chord. So for E flat major 7, you've got E flat, G, B flat, and D. So those are all going to be safe notes for those first two bars while we're on E flat. And then when we get to the D half diminished, those notes are D, F, A flat, and C. Okay, so you want to start getting familiar with these arpeggios. So if we're playing arpeggios, right? So I did the E flat major 7, and then D half diminished, and I ended it on a G because we're on the G chord now, and then we would go to C minor. That'd be a C minor 7 arpeggio, and then B flat minor 7, E flat 7, and then we're on to A flat major 7, and then D flat 7, so these are our basic chord tones, and let's try playing a little bit using only chord tones. So I'm only going to use root, 3rd, 5th, and 7th, and I might even simplify it more and play only thirds, for instance, or only fifths, or only thirds and sevenths. You can do it whatever you feel comfortable with. If you feel comfortable just playing roots, then just play roots through the chord changes. But I'm going to play only chord tones for now. Let's see what happens. Okay, so that time I played through the whole form, which went to the second half, which I guess we should get into now that we're playing chord tones. We got some more chords on the second half. So after we return back to our E flat, we kind of do a repeat of the chords we had. So E flat, 2-5 to C minor, and then 2-5 to A flat, and then back to E flat, and then we have this A half diminished to D7, and then this descending thing where we go E flat, D7. A lot of times we'll play a D flat 7 there, C7, and then a 2-5-1 to E flat. So we've got some other chords to play chord tones for there. That's a A half diminished and a D7 with a flat 9. And then we're back to the, sometimes you can play a G minor there to C7, or the D flat to C7. And then F minor, B flat, or B, B flat, E flat. So when you do straight descending, it'll be like, right? Or you can do, or you could do, right? So there, you got some options there at the end. If you listen to recordings, you hear many different versions. Okay, so now we're playing chord tones, and we've got the full form now. So what you want to do is practice just limiting yourself. So like say you're only going to play thirds over the whole thing. So you're just playing the thirds of each chord. So it'd be for E flat, and then so that's a third of E flat, or sorry, third of C. So here, let me play that with the backing track. I'm just going to play thirds, and I'll try to keep it super simple. So I tried to stick mostly to just playing thirds. I had to get away from it a little bit just to make it sound a little more musical. But just as an exercise, limit yourself to only a couple of notes for each chord. Okay, so now putting it all together, we've got our major blues and minor blues. You don't want to forget about the blues when you're playing jazz, because that's a huge part of it. Is you got to have some blues in there. And playing the different scales, right, for each chord. Because the way I think about it, chords and scales are the same thing. You know what I mean? If you keep stacking up the extensions on a chord, like the 9th, the 11th, the 13th, you end up with the whole scale. So chords and scales is the same thing. Just chords are arranged in a different way. You know, they're stacked on top of each other instead of played linearly. So we've got the chord tones and scales and the pentatonics that are kind of floating over the chord changes a little bit. So let's see what it sounds like when we put it all together. Okay, here we go. Okay. All right. So we've got a few different approaches for playing over these chord changes. We've got our pentatonic scales. We've got our playing chord tones. We've got our playing diatonic scales like E flat and the A flat melodic minor. I think that those should give you some good tools to get you started soloing over this tune. And yeah, I hope that this gives you some ideas, and I hope you have fun with it. And if you have any questions about anything, leave them in the comments. And I should have a PDF of some of this material in the description below. All right, so I'll see you next time.